Vice President Joe Biden squeezed the shoulders of Carter's wife, Stephanie.
She was 12, I was 30, but anyway.
It's hard for me to explain why that was the case. Just take my word for it.
Well, let's start with the obvious. If top national leaders are criminals themselves, who's going to keep the rest of us in line? I mean, leaders are supposed to be role models, right? So if they're knee-deep in shady dealings or breaking the law left, right and center, what kind of message does that send to the rest of us? That it's okay to cheat, lie and steal as long as you have enough power? That's not exactly a recipe for a healthy, functioning society, is it? And let's be real. No country ever needs any new reasons for other countries to think they're a bunch of bumbling idiots.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to excuse me.
So let us just agree that national leaders mustn't be criminals themselves, because it's bad for business, bad for the country, and bad for the rest of us who have to deal with the fallout. Of course, the US is very different from the rest of us earthlings when it comes to presidential criminal accusations and convictions. It's not that other countries don't have their fair share of political scandals, but the sheer number of them in the US is kind of impressive or depressing, depends on how you look at it really. But hey, at least they are not boring. It's like every few years we are treated to a new episode of Presidents Gone Wild, and we are all just along for the ride. Maybe instead of being outraged and scandalized by our president's criminal shenanigans, we should just embrace them. Turn the White House into a reality TV show where the contestants are all former presidents trying to outdo each other with their criminal exploits. Call it Presidential Survivor, Jailhouse Edition. According to the Washington Post, 41% of Americans surveyed in 2015 believed that selfish appropriately describes government leaders. Recently, in 2021, Gallup revealed that Americans' confidence in their federal government to handle international and domestic problems is just at 39%. These figures represent historical lows of public faith in American governance. How did it get so bad? Well, a quick overview of US presidential criminal history may tell you why. Oh, and do check out this video about the 2023 Pentagon data leaks if you'd like to see a great example of America's failing intelligence and soft power. Okay, so picture this. It's January 17, 1998. Friends is the biggest show on TV, and the internet is still a baby. But one website, the Drudge Report, decides to drop a bombshell report that sets the world on fire. Blockbuster report, it screams, revealing that the President of the United States, Bill Clinton, is allegedly having an affair with her young White House intern. Cue the gasps, the disbelief, and the sound of heads exploding all across the country. But wait, there's more. The next day, Drudge drops another bombshell. The intern in question is none other than 23-year-old Monica Lewinsky. And what's even crazier is that she's due to give a deposition in a sexual harassment case against Clinton filed by a woman named Paula Jones. It's like something out of a soap opera, right? So Jones is seeking $750,000 or $750,000 in damages, and things are already pretty messy. But then Lewinsky gives her deposition and denies any hanky-panky with the president. But little did she know, her friend Linda Tripp, who worked at the Pentagon, was secretly recording their conversations about the affair. Talk about a betrayal of trust. Clinton even took to the airwaves to deny that he had ever had sexual relations with Lewinsky.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never.
Of course, as we all now know, that was a lie, and Lewinsky had the semen-stained dress to prove it. Fast forward a few months and Clinton found himself in some pretty hot water. The Office of Independent Counsel was all up in his business, investigating whether he had lied under oath or obstructed justice in relation to the whole Lewinsky thing. And let's just say things weren't looking too good for old Bubba. So the House of Representatives got involved and they decided to impeach Clinton on charges of perjury and obstruction of justice. That's right, he became only the second president in US history to get impeached. The trial lasted for 5 long weeks and everyone was on the edge of their seats waiting to see what would happen. In the end, though, Clinton managed to dodge the bullet. He was acquitted on both charges and got to keep his job as president, at least for a little while longer. And I think we can all agree it made for some pretty juicy headlines and scandalous gossip around the water cooler. So it's safe to say that the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal was a doozy. It had everything: sex, lies, betrayal, and a whole lot of awkwardness. And it just goes to show that even the most powerful people in the world can get caught up in some seriously messy drama.
For the impeachment of the President of the United States of America.
Ah, yes, the infamous impeachment of good old Donald Trump. Back in December 2019, Trump became the third US president in history to get impeached. And what was the charge, you ask? Abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. Sounds pretty serious, right? Well, it all started with a phone call. Trump was on the line with the president of Ukraine and he allegedly threatened to withhold $400 million in military aid unless Ukraine investigated Hunter Biden's activity in the country. You know, just your average everyday presidential behavior. The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, wasn't having it though. She said,
abused his power for his own personal political benefit
at the expense of our national security. Ouch. But Trump, of course, had a caps lock response ready to go. He called it an assault on America and an assault on the Republican Party. Good old Donnie and his dramatics, as always. Anyway, the impeachment vote went down along party lines. Every Democrat voted in favor of impeachment, while all but one Republican, shootout to Mitt Romney, voted against it. And since the Senate was controlled by the Republicans, Trump managed to escape with an acquittal. So there you have it, folks. Another day in the wild world of American politics.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
So, remember when the Capitol was stormed by a bunch of angry Trump supporters back in 2021? Yeah, that was a wild ride. Apparently, things got so out of hand that 7 people actually died. Not exactly what you would call a peaceful protest. Anyway, the whole thing was so chaotic and dangerous that Trump ended up getting impeached for the second time in his presidency. The charge was incitement of insurrection, which is just a fancy way of saying that he was basically egging on his supporters to go wreak havoc on the Capitol. Before the attack, Trump gave a speech where he told his supporters to
Peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
But then he went and said some pretty inflammatory stuff like how if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Yeah, not exactly the kind of language you want to hear from a sitting president. Of course, not everyone was on board with impeaching Trump. Even some of his own party members were hesitant to throw him under the bus. But in the end, enough people agreed that what he did was pretty messed up and he was impeached again. Unfortunately, though, that didn't really seem to faze Trump. He was acquitted again, which means he's free to run for president in 2024 if he wants to. So who knows, maybe we'll get to do this whole thing all over again in a few years.
Here's Warren Harding in fair weather days of 1920, posing with his ambitious wife.
And Mr. Harding, we've selected you. So
Okay, listen up folks, cause we're about to take a deep dive into the story of Warren Harding, aka the guy who's widely considered the worst president in American history, according to all those fancy academic polls, that is. Now, some people might argue that Harding got a bad rap. After all, he took over during a nasty recession back in 1920 and supposedly turned things around pretty quickly. But let's not forget the real reason he's so infamous. His administration was about as corrupt as they come. Apparently, Harding surrounded himself with a bunch of cronies who were more interested in lining their own pockets than doing any actual governing. And as much as he may have been a charming guy who liked to play cards and chase women, he wasn't exactly what you'd call a strong leader. In fact, his own successor, Herbert Hoover, said he lacked both experience and intellectual quality. Ouch. But the real kicker came with the Teapot Dome scandal. See, Harding's Secretary of the Interior, a guy named Albert Fall, was put in charge of some oil reserves in Wyoming and California. And instead of going through the normal bidding process, he just handed over the drilling contracts to his buddies at Mammoth Oil and Pan American Petroleum. Talk about nepotism. Naturally, this all blew up in Harding's face when the scandal came to light. It was like Watergate before there was even a Watergate. And while Harding may have shuffled off his mortal coil a few years later, his reputation was forever tarnished by the whole mess. So there you have it, folks, the cautionary tale of Warren Harding, the president who couldn't say no to a good card game or a shady deal. Don't let this be you.
Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is truth?
So, let's talk about Richard Nixon, the man, the myth, the benchmark for political corruption in America. In 1972, the Watergate scandal broke, which was basically a bunch of burglars bugging and breaking into the Democratic National Convention. And thus, the Gate suffix was born, forever associating Nixon with scandal and corruption. At first, the Nixon administration was all, what, us? No way. And managed to win the 1972 election in a landslide. But as it turned out, the Watergate scandal was only just getting started. Nixon was getting increasingly anxious and paranoid, and he went to great lengths to keep things under wraps. He even gave the burglars hundreds of thousands of dollars and got the CIA involved in obstructing the FBI's investigation. Talk about desperate. But then enter Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, two investigative journalists who published their findings in the Washington Post. With pressure from Congress and the Supreme Court mounting, Nixon's days were numbered. And on August 8, 1974, he finally threw in the towel and resigned. Now, you might think that with hours of audio tapes confirming Nixon's corruption, he would be in for some serious punishment. But nope. His successor, Gerald Ford, decided to pardon him instead. Talk about get out of jail free card. So, in the end, Nixon's legacy will forever be associated with Watergate and the Gate suffix. But hey, at least he managed to avoid any actual consequences for his actions, right?
This is what we'll do.
Alright, check this out. Did you know that one time President Ulysses S. Grant got busted for speeding in his horse-drawn carriage? That's right. Old Ulysses was out there living life in the fast lane until he got pulled over by a cop named William H. West. And this wasn't just any cop. This guy was so hardcore that he arrested the freaking president. But here's the kicker. Even after getting busted, Grant still couldn't resist the need for speed. The very next day, he got caught again by Officer West, who was understandably pretty ticked off. And you know what? He wasn't going to let the president off the hook just because he was, the president. Nope, he took him straight to the police station and slapped him with a $20 fine. Can you imagine being President Grant at that moment? Talk about a red face. And to add insult to injury, he had to walk all the way back to the White House like a commoner. I bet he learned his lesson after that. Either that or he started taking secret joyrides in his carriage just to mess with Officer West. Okay, so picture this. George W. Bush, former president of the United States, was never impeached, but his administration's invasion of Iraq caused a lot of people to raise an eyebrow. And when I say raise an eyebrow, I mean accuse him of committing war crimes. Yikes. According to Richard Clark, a counterterrorism expert, some of the things the Bush administration did during the invasion were definitely not on the up and up. In fact, they were downright illegal. But hey, who needs international law when you're the leader of the free world, right? So, the whole thing started when the US and UK decided to invade Iraq and kick out Saddam Hussein's regime.
Simply stated, there is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction.
Sounds great, except they kind of did it under false pretenses. See, they said they were going in to disarm Iraq of weapons of mass destruction, but when they got there, they didn't find any. Not a single one. It was like they were playing a twisted game of hide and seek, and the weapons were the ones doing the hiding. But the real kicker came in 2012 when the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Commission found George Bush and 7 members of his administration guilty of war crimes. Yes, you hear that right. War crimes. Torture victims came forward and told their stories of suffering at the hands of US soldiers and contractors. And let me tell you, it was not pretty. It was enough to convince the court that Bush and his cronies were war criminals of torture and for cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment. So there you have it. George W. Bush may have avoided impeachment, but he couldn't escape the truth. And the truth is, you can't just go invading countries willy-nilly and expect everyone to pat you on the back. War crimes are not a good look, my friends. Not a good look at all.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Alright folks, buckle up for a history lesson that's more divisive than pineapple on pizza. We're talking about the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which have been causing more arguments than a family Thanksgiving dinner. On one side, we've got the Irish Times and the Guardian, who are calling the bombings a crime against humanity and an act of sheer inhumanity. Ouch, those are some harsh words. They're not alone though. Plenty of people think dropping those bombs was a major no-no. And then there are historians like Anthony Beevor who say Truman didn't have much of a choice. Apparently, Japanese documents indicate that their army was prepared to accept up to 28 million civilian deaths. That's right, million with an M. So maybe Truman was trying to save lives in the long run. But even with all these arguments, it seems like we're never going to agree on whether the bombings were justified or not. It's like trying to convince your friends that pineapple belongs on pizza. Well, it totally does, by the way. So let's just agree to disagree and hope that we never have to make a decision that difficult.
I wanted this time to talk with you about an extremely sensitive and profoundly important matter of foreign policy.
Let me tell you about the Iran-Contra affair, the scandal that rocked Ronald Reagan's presidency harder than an 80s hair metal ballad. Basically, the government officials were caught selling arms to Iran like it was some kind of discount bin at a flea market. And what was their reason for doing this? To release American hostages in Lebanon. That's like stealing from your own mom to get the latest iPhone. But wait, there's more. The money from these shady arms deals went straight to the Contras, a group of right-wing rebels who were fighting Nicaragua's Marxist government. So it's like a classic double whammy for breaking national and international law. These guys weren't just pushing the envelope, they were licking it and stamping it too. Reagan himself claimed he didn't know anything about it.
We did not, repeat, did not trade weapons or anything else for hostages.
But who knows? Maybe he was too busy practicing his one-liners in front of the mirror to pay attention. He did say,
"The way I work is to identify the problem, find the right individuals to do the job, and then let them go to it."
Well, it looks like those individuals went to it all right, straight to jail. The Tower Commission investigation found that Reagan's hands-off approach to management was a big factor in the scandal. But hey, it didn't hurt his popularity too much. He still left office with a higher approval rating than a golden retriever puppy. Guess America loves a good scandal as long as it's not too close to home.
The left. Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
Who's on your list?
So, apparently, Tara Reid has accused Joe Biden of being a bit handsy with her back in the day. She claims that while working for him, he cornered her against a wall and started putting his hands all over her and under her shirt and skirt. Yikes, talk about a creepy encounter. Of course, Biden's team is denying these allegations left and right, saying that...
All due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey.
Biden himself even went on TV to set the record straight, saying...
It never happened.
But to be fair, this isn't the first time old Joe has been accused of being a little too touchy-feely. Apparently, a bunch of other ladies have come forward saying that Biden's hugs, kisses, and hair sniffing are making them feel all kinds of uncomfortable. One politician from Nevada even said that Biden came up behind her, smelled her hair, and planted a big old kiss on the back of her head. Excuse me, sir, but that is not how you win over voters. All in all, it seems like Biden's got a bit of a reputation for being a little too affectionate with the ladies. Let's just hope he keeps his hands to himself from now on, or at least until he becomes a certified massage therapist. Well, that's it, folks. We've reached the end of our journey through the worst crimes accused of US presidents. And let's be honest, we're all probably feeling a little bit better about our own questionable life choices right now. So go ahead and treat yourself to that extra slice of pizza, because at least you're not a president accused of colluding with Russia or having a secret love child with an intern. Cheers to being just a regular old human being. And we just love hearing from you. So please share your views in the comments area. Check out the excellent links in the description and smash the subscribe and bell icons to have YouTube inform you when our next video comes out. Or you can check this one out right now. Adios, amigos.